Kuhn Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @KuhnReview, that is @CuendReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@kuhnreview.com. That is INFORMATION or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the National, Friday the 29th of November 2024. From the Politics section. Alex Salmond's family proud of former FM ahead of memorial. Article written by Adam Robertson. Alex Salmond's niece has reflected on her family's pride in her uncle ahead of a memorial service for him in Edinburgh this weekend. The ceremony is to be live-streamed from St Giles Cathedral at 11 a.m. and will be attended by friends, family and former colleagues. Salmond died of a heart attack, aged 69, on October the 12th, while attending an international conference in North Macedonia. Speaking to the BBC, Salmond's niece, Christina Hendry, said, "I'm not sure there's really been time to fully process things and fully grieve, but as a family, we're sticking together, keeping close and keeping going. I think for anybody and for any family, losing a loved one is really, really hard. It's been especially difficult because of where he died, but also how profile he was, and I think that's come with challenges. There's no escape. It's also in the media a lot, and I'm not sure that's allowed time to actually process things ourselves as a family." A private funeral for Salmond took place in Stryken Parish Church on October 29th. Hendry also travelled to the Scottish Parliament following Salmond's death to view the Book of Condolence and the many tributes which had been left for him by the public. A number of performers will be at the memorial, including Dougie MacLean and the Proclaimers. She added, "Uncle Alex always spoke about his love for Scotland, and I think that's what we're going with. We knew how much Uncle Alex loved Scotland, loved Scottish culture, loved the Scottish arts. We wanted to be about Scotland and about Uncle Alex, and about how much he valued Scotland and saw Scotland's potential for the future, for independence." Tributes are to be delivered by Kenny McCaskill, while SNP MSP Fergus Ewing is to read from The Wild Geese by Violet Jacob. A statement previously released by Salmond's family said, "The family are overwhelmed by the level of public interest in attending Alex's memorial service. Sadly, we cannot accommodate everyone who would like to attend, but are pleased to say that the event will be live-streamed from St Giles Cathedral." That article was written by Adam Robertson and read to you by Elizabeth. From the National, Friday the 29th of November 2024, from the Politics section. Elon Musk claims Reform will win next election after sharing petition. Article written by Adam Robertson. Elon Musk has claimed that Reform UK will win the general election. It comes after former Tory minister and MP Andrea Jenkyns defected to join Nigel Farage's party on Thursday. In a post on Twitter, X, the social media site owned by Musk, he responded to a tweet announcing the news. The tweet reposted by Musk, who backed Donald Trump at the US election and has been selected to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, said, "Former Tory minister Andrea Jenkyns has joined Reform UK. Reform will win the next election." Musk responded with the caption, "Yes." Reform won 5 MPs at the July general election, with polls suggesting they will pick up MSPs at the next Holyrood election. The party have also been performing strongly in council by-elections across Scotland, finishing in 3rd place behind Labour and the SNP in Glasgow contests last week. It comes in the same week that Elon Musk shared a petition which has gathered more than 2.8 million signatures calling for a general election. The petition has been met with criticism, with the Scottish Greens saying it was being promoted by far-right conspiracy theorists, racists and people like Elon Musk. Musk's time as the owner of Twitter, X, has been mired in controversy amid accusations he has allowed far-right conspiracy theories to spread across the platform. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has already dismissed a petition during an interview on This Morning. He said, "I remind myself that very many people didn't vote Labour at the last election. I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works. There will be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place. What our focus is on is the decisions that I have to make every day." We told earlier this week how Sky News host Kay Burley told Elon Musk to butt out of UK politics after sharing the petition on the election. That article was written by Adam Robertson and read to you by Elizabeth. From The National, Friday the 29th of November 2024, from the Politics section. Shona Robison has limited room for manoeuvre in Scottish budget. Article written by Katrine Bussey. Finance Secretary Shona Robison has only limited room for manoeuvre in next week's Scottish budget, experts have warned, despite the significant additional cash Holyrood ministers will receive from the UK government. The Scottish Government is due an additional £1.5 billion for the current financial year and a further £3.4 billion in 2025-26 as a result of Chancellor Rachel Reeves' UK budget. But experts at the Fraser of Allender Institute said the settlement is still tricky for the Holyrood Finance Secretary. João Sousa, Deputy Director at the Strathclyde University-based think tank, noted £7 out of every £8 spent by the Scottish Government goes on just 4 areas: health, pay, social security and grants to local government. This seriously limits their room for manoeuvre in changing the overall shape of the budget, he said. He added that figuring out the funding position for 2025-26 has been much more challenging this year. Dr Sousa said the lack of a medium-term financial strategy from the Scottish Government this year had made this near impossible, but said the report from the Fraser of Allender Institute set out the various pressures that the budget is likely to be under. It said that despite the increases in funding that have come as a result of the UK Government's budget, the settlement for 2025-26 is still tricky for Shona Robison as she presents her budget for 2025-26 next week, and she will have limited room for manoeuvre. With the public sector wage bill accounting for more than half of the government's day-to-day spending, the think tank stressed the significant bearing pay rises would have on the overall budget position. With pay costs recurring each year, rises agreed in 2024-25, such as the 5.5% for NHS workers, will have a big impact on the overall budgetary decisions, the report added. In addition, public sector workers are on average paid more in Scotland, and given the larger public sector north of the border, the challenges here will be even more acute, the think tank said. Its report stressed how decisions on pay, together with spending on areas like social security, where costs are higher than the funding received from the UK government, have put additional pressure on the Scottish Government's budget. When pressures from pay, increased national insurance contributions and restoring the winter fuel payments are all taken into account, the report said that for next year there is little in the way of additional funding that isn't already committed. The think tank went on to warn that if pay rises are higher than planned, the Scottish Government could need to take emergency action again. First Minister John Swinney and his predecessors have set out their determination to tackle child poverty, but the report said although spending on this has grown significantly since 2018-19, it would not be fair to say that it has become a large part of the Scottish budget. The think tank noted spending in this area remains under 3% of all discretionary resource funding, adding capital spending on child poverty reduction, through, for example, the provision of affordable housing, has actually fallen by 13% in real terms since 2019-20. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "The Scottish budget will prioritise funding to deliver on the First Minister's priorities, which include growing the economy." Last week, the Scottish Parliament agreed with the Scottish Government motion that the UK Government should fully reimburse the over £700 million costs of employer national insurance contributions to the delivery of public services in Scotland due to the rise in employer contributions and that's what needs to happen. This UK government policy risks hampering economic growth and damaging public services, and whilst discussions with the Treasury are ongoing, we still do not have certainty ahead of the Scottish budget. That article was written by Katrine Bussey and read to you by Elizabeth. From The National, Friday the 29th of November 2024, from the Culture section. Lost artwork of Robert Burns' Muse discovered in Scottish Castle. Article written by Lucy Garcia. There are hopes that a lost artwork of immense significance has been discovered at a Scottish castle. Scottish literature scholar Professor Gerard Carruthers believes an 18th century portrait may depict the poet Robert Fergusson, who was the muse of Robert Burns. Carruthers, who examined the painting at Barnbougle Castle near Edinburgh, said that previously only 3 known likenesses of Fergusson from his lifetime existed. These were a crude sketch in the Cape Club Minute Book for 1773, a portrait by Alexander Runciman, and a painting by an unknown artist, said to have once been in the possession of the artist Henry Raeburn. The research suggests the newly highlighted portrait may be a previously unknown lifetime likeness of Fergusson, who died at just 24 years old in 1774, with this year marking the 250th anniversary of his death. Carruthers, who is the University of Glasgow's Francis Hutcheson Chair of Scottish Literature, said, "This discovery could be one of the most significant Fergusson finds in decades." While examining a copy of Fergusson's work that belonged to Robert Burns, a portrait was also kindly presented for examination by Lady Jane Kaplan at Barnbougle Castle. I realised when I saw it we might be looking at a lost artwork of immense significance. This may well match a fabled lost portrait of Fergusson, or be one hitherto entirely unknown. The portrait's provenance and artistic features suggest it may be the very artwork mentioned in Fergusson's own poem, Codicil to Rob Fergusson's Last Will, where he references a portrait intended for his publisher Walter Ruddiman. The portrait has an inscription on the back which reads, "Portrait of Robert Fergusson," and there are 3 leading theories on its origins. The most compelling evidence, Carruthers says, points towards James Cumming, a fellow member of Fergusson's Cape Club and a portrait painter who served as herald painter and Lion Clark depute. Other theories include the portrait being the work of Andrew Fife, a skilled draftsman and prize-winning painter who had connections to Fergusson's artistic circles, or potentially a likeness of Fergusson's sister, who was known to bear a strong resemblance to the poet, by an unknown painter. Carruthers added, "Whatever the case, we have here a late 18th century oil portrait of Fergusson, very possibly painted during his lifetime, and from which he may well have sat. The heraldic illustrations in the frame and surrounding the painting align perfectly with James Cumming's official role in regulating Scottish coats of arms." The painting was part of the collection of Archibald Philip Primrose, the 5th Earl of Rosebery, who served as the UK's Prime Minister from 1894 to 1895. The portrait has also sparked interest among art historians. James Holloway, the former director of the Scottish National Portrait Gallery, has confirmed the painting's late 18th century origins, though he was unable to attribute it to a known artist. Holloway added, "It is a wonderful discovery and a great rarity. I congratulate Professor Carruthers." The portrait will be unveiled to an audience at Irvine Burns Club on Friday. Robert Burns moved to Irvine in 1781, and while staying there he found a book of poetry by Fergusson in a local bookshop, which fired his creativity, particularly in Scots. Bill Nolan, Honorary Secretary of the Irvine Burns Club, which celebrates its 200th anniversary in 2026, said, "Willie Templeton, a local Irvine bookseller, introduced Robert Burns to the verses in Scots of Robert Fergusson as a possible medium for his own poems. By his own admission, Burns chose Fergusson as his muse, and while there is no doubt that Burns could and did write in English, it was his ability to write and publish in Scots that has set Burns apart from other 18th century Scottish versifiers." The discovery comes as the University of Glasgow leads commemorations marking the 250th anniversary of Fergusson's death through the Leverhulme Trust-funded project, The Works of Robert Fergusson, Reconstructing Textual and Cultural Legacies. This initiative aims to publish a new edition of Ferguson's complete works. That article was written by Lucy Garcia and read to you by Elizabeth.
From the National, Sunday, 1st of December 2024. From the news section. Greens lay out 2 conditions for them to support SNP and budget vote. This article has been written by Xander Illiards. The Scottish Greens have laid out 2 conditions which they say will allow them to back the SNP government's budget. MSP Ross Greer told the Sunday National that if the SNP committed to the rollout of free school meals to all P6 and P7 pupils and trialed a £2 cap on bus fares, then the Green Group would support its spending plans. The Scottish budget, which will be John Swinney's first as First Minister, is due to be delivered on Wednesday, December 4. Greer said it was a chance to show the kind of Scotland he wants to build. If it is a fairer and greener Scotland, Green MSPs will be willing to work constructively with him to see it pass, he went on. Scotland is one of the richest countries in the history of our planet. It's shocking and entirely avoidable that so many children still live in poverty and come to school hungry. In September, the SNP dropped our previous shared commitment to expand free school meals to P6 and P7. We want to see that decision reversed and a commitment in the budget to deliver those meals. On bus fares, he said, to protect the planet and help families with the cost of living, we need to make buses more affordable. That is why we have proposed trialling a £2 bus fare cap for services across Scotland from next year. Greer added, these are the kind of bold, ambitious and practical changes that the First Minister could make to undo the damage being inflicted by Westminster and build a fairer, greener Scotland. If he takes these steps on Wednesday, the Scottish Greens will work with him to agree a final budget proposal early in the new year. Previously, the Greens have ruled out backing an SNP government budget that includes any cuts to the modest spending on independence. Swinney's minority administration needs the support of at least one opposition party to get its plans passed through Holyrood, and the Greens look like the most likely option. The Scottish government has been approached for comment. This article has been written by Xander Illiards.
From the National, Monday, 2nd of December 2024. News section. Plan to build 200 holiday lodges in Scottish Park to sustain the state. By Marie Sharp. A plan to build up to 200 holiday lodges within Dalkeith Country Park will help sustain Bullock Estate for the future and boost the local economy, its operators say. The proposals are set to have a first look from Midlothian councillors at a meeting of their planning committee next week. Bullock Estate say the move into holiday accommodation will provide vital income towards a continued stewardship of the country park. In their design statement for the lodges, they say more investment is needed in the commercial side of the park to attract people all year round and ensure its future. They say holiday lodge accommodation offers an important commercial opportunity for the estate, given the natural beauty and accessibility of its parkland. Developed sympathetically within the landscape of an appropriate scale, it would contribute vital income to Bullock's stewardship programme and provide a valuable economic benefit to the local economy through employment and visitor spend. The proposed site for the lodges lies between Salters Road on the east and the River South Esk on the west, over nearly 42 hectares of land. In their proposal, the applicants say the lodges will be designed to blend into the natural landscape, will be energy efficient and use eco-friendly materials. There are also plans to reduce their footprint by off-site construction to deliver them in sections to reduce on-site work and environmental impact. They include an image of a lodge retreat cabin at Blenheim Palace as an example of the type proposed. The pre-application notice will go before Planning Committee next week for councillors to comment on ahead of any plans being formally submitted. They are available to view on the Midlothian Planning portal. That article was by Mary Sharp. From the National, Monday, 2nd of December 2024. News section. First City in Scotland wins top UNESCO award for lifelong learning by Lucy Jackson. A city in Scotland has become the first in the country to win a top award in recognising its achievements in lifelong learning. Glasgow has been announced as a UNESCO Learning City, the first city in the country to be awarded the acclaim for its commitment to accessible, inclusive learning, which is not just a phase of life, but a continuous journey embraced by all. The award was announced on Monday alongside 9 other cities across the world, including UNESCO's 6th International Conference on Learning Cities in Dubai, Saudi Arabia. Glasgow City Council said it aims to provide a wide range of programmes and initiatives for all ages, encouraging its residents to integrate learning into everyday life. Lord Provost of Glasgow, Jacqueline McLaren, said the accolade was proof of the innovative work and practice across the city to enrich the lives of every citizen. This is a fantastic achievement for our city and very well deserved, she said. Glasgow launched itself as a learning city in 1999, and this concept has been the driving force for the city's development in lifelong learning. Many stakeholders across the city contributed to the bid processes, and it's a testament to the commitment and dedication of all those delivering education and who are enhancing and nurturing the needs of all ages in Glasgow. Learning improves all of our lives and our communities, and it continues far beyond school, further and higher education. 38% of Glasgow's population is over 45 years old. The award was accepted at a ceremony in Saudi Arabia by Professor Scott McGregor, Vice Principal of the University of Strathclyde. He said lifelong learning is at the heart of education and learning in Glasgow. Schools, colleges, universities and community-based learning is thriving in Glasgow, creating opportunities for individuals and communities. This UNESCO Learning City Award is testament to the power of partnership working in Glasgow in this vital endeavour. Since our foundation at the place of useful learning, Strathclyde has been committed to widening access to education for the people of Glasgow and beyond. We do this not only through initiatives such as our Schools Outreach Programme, Young Strathclyder, the Scottish Space School and our Age-Friendly Academy, but through our leading role in Glasgow City Innovation District and the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District Scotland, where we partner with business and industry to develop cutting-edge research, upskill our workforce, create jobs and grow the economy for all. Meanwhile, Isabel Kempf of UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning said this year's UNESCO Learning City awardees demonstrate the transformative potential of lifelong learning in addressing our world's most pressing challenges. I warmly congratulate the UNESCO Learning City of Glasgow on this well-earned award. Glasgow stands as an inspiring example of how investing in lifelong learning empowers individuals and transforms societies. Professor Rachel Sanderson, Deputy Chief Chancellor of External Engagement at the University of Glasgow, said the university was delighted about the achievement. She said learning must be accessible to all ages and backgrounds, and we strive to achieve this at the University of Glasgow through our widening participation programmes, civic engagement, partnerships, and our ongoing research collaborations, shaping policy and practice across the higher education sector. It's extremely exciting to see Glasgow recognised as an outstanding global exemplar, and we look forward to making the most of the opportunities this brings, both as the University of Glasgow and a Glasgow Learning City partner, to the communities that we serve. John Rafferty, Deputy Principal at Glasgow Clyde College, said this is a tremendous accolade for the city, which reflects our rich portfolio of education providers working together to create rewarding pathways for learners of all ages. At Glasgow Clyde College, we're proud to welcome many older students attracted to our diverse portfolio of courses, from evening classes to part-time modules, or even if you simply want to take on a new challenge, you're never too old to go back to education, and there will most definitely be a course suitable for you. That article was by Lucy Jackson. From the National, Monday 2nd of December 2024, News section. Scottish lawyer joins Alba to ensure Alex Salmond's legacy continues, by James Walker. A leading Scottish lawyer has announced that he's joined the Alba Party. Mike Daly, who is currently the principal solicitor at the Govan Law Centre, said he made the choice to help ensure Alex Salmond's legacy continues. The former Alba leader and First Minister passed away in October, with his public memorial taking place this last weekend at Edinburgh St Giles Cathedral. The Glasgow lawyer who attended the memorial said he made the move having reflected on the titan that Alex Salmond was, as well as his contribution to Scottish society. Daly said it's clear that Scottish politics requires a radical shape-up. Over recent years, the SNP have lost their way on independence and in running the shop at Holyrood. He added, "It is clear to me that Alba are pulling together a team of serious people who are capable of restoring some much-needed competence at the heart of Scottish Parliament. This is needed now more than ever to advance the cause of Scottish independence." Alba's acting party leader, Kenny McCaskill, welcomed the terrific addition of Daly. His record on a variety of social justice campaigns, from the abolition of warrant sales to tackling homelessness, as well as the work he does in his capacity at Govan Law Centre, speaks for itself, McCaskill said. He was instrumental alongside Alex Salmond in bringing forward the legal challenge against both the UK and Scottish governments over the cut to winter fuel payments. I'm sure his experience will help to advance the party as we look forward to the 2026 Scottish Parliament elections. The Alba Party is rising. That article was by James Walker. From the National, Monday, 2nd of December 2024, news section. Ambitious plan announced to protect endangered mussel, by Laura Hannett, multimedia journalist. Cairngorms National Park has announced the preparation of an ambitious plan to help an endangered species of mussel. The population of freshwater pearl mussels have been rapidly declining in recent years. Freshwater pearl mussels hold an essential role in the river's biodiversity as they help to preserve other species and indicate the well-being of rivers. Cairngorms National Park said they can filter 50 litres of water a day, which benefits other species, including salmon, trout and otters. They're also said to improve the water quality of the River Spey near Aviemore and the River Dee near Aberdeen. Spey Fisheries Board, Spey Catchment Partnership and the Park Authority are working on plans to move threatened populations of pearl mussels from the main stem of the River Spey to safer habitats in the upper tributaries of the river, Cairngorms National Park declared. Dr. Susan Cooksley, Catchment Partnership Manager and Freshwater Ecologist at the James Hutton Institute, a scientific research group in Scotland, said the freshwater pearl mussel is a highly sensitive indicator of a river's overall health. The recovery strategy that is proposed aims to support the species from all sides, protecting the existing mussels, restoring habitat, and then reinforcing the population. Subject to a licensing agreement, the recovery strategy will start in the spring of 2025. On the River Dee, measures are already in place to protect the species, such as eDNA monitoring, which can detect very small amounts of DNA to help pinpoint where action is needed. The work led by the James Hutton Institute highlighted the loss of 90% of the freshwater pearl mussels since 2022 in the River Dee. One of the main causes of the decline is thought to be the 2015 Storm Frank, as it swept the population away, but also tore up the riverbed, leaving it highly unstable for mussels to anchor on, Cairngorms National Park said. Dr. Peter Cosgrove, the Cairngorms National Park Authority board member and director of Alba Ecology, said the survey highlighted the devastating effects Storm Frank had on our pearl mussel population, which is why this plan is so critical. A study by the James Hutton Institute found that conservation breeding might help reinforce the River Dee's mussel population. As this species of mussels takes 5 to 10 years to reach maturity, this technique will be part of the long-term Cairngorms recovery strategy. Working with our highly experienced River Partnership, we will first work to safeguard the remaining freshwater pearl mussels, and then we can work on population reinforcement, said Dr. Cosgrove. The good news is that extensive river restoration work is already underway, and we will continue to build on that work going forward. River Dee will undergo habitat restoration in preparation for adult mussel reintroduction. Catchment scale restoration is the key to resilient rivers where nature and people can thrive in the face of climate change, said Dr. Cooksley. The work already underway in the River Dee will prepare the way for future population reinforcements. That article was by Laura Hannott. From the National, Monday, 2nd of December 2024. Politics section. Reform will help SNP at 2026 Holyrood elections, Scottish Tories claim. By Laura Pollock, multimedia journalist. The rise of Nigel Farage's Reform UK will only help the SNP by splitting the vote, the leader of the Scottish Tories has claimed. Russell Finlay said he was disappointed that two of his councillors had defected to the right-wing party last week. He criticised Reform for having no Scottish policies and no Scottish leadership to speak of. Recent polling has put Reform on more of 10% of the vote, which could translate to around a dozen seats at the next Holyrood election. At the last general election, the party came ahead of the Tories in every Glasgow constituency. Speaking during a visit to Paisley, Finlay said he understood why voters are seeking an alternative to the main parties. Asked about the defections, he told the Press Association, "I'm clearly disappointed. Since becoming leader just 2 months ago, I've attempted to reach out to our membership and associations across Scotland to explain to them that we understand why people feel disconnected from politics, why they are desperately wanting a common sense, conservative alternative to the socialist consensus at Holyrood. And I think we represent that. We'll have to fight for every single vote. I don't want to see anyone leaving the party, whether they are members or elected representatives. My job is to persuade them that we are the only solution. What we can't have is another party coming along to split our vote. That would only be to the benefit of the SNP. The Scottish Tory leader and Reform poses just as big a threat to Labour as it does to the Conservatives. He went on, "I think we have to keep things in perspective. Reform has no meaningful infrastructure, no Scottish policies and no Scottish leadership to speak of. I think at the general election, a lot of people who voted Reform did so out of frustration at the feeling of disconnect from politics more generally. Our job is to work hard to persuade people that we're on their side and we understand their problems. Reform UK have been approached for comment." That article was by Laura Pollock.
From the National, Tuesday the 3rd of December, from the comment section. If SNP are serious about seeing off Reform, now is the time to act. Article written by Steph Payton. Maybe it is in the nature of living in interesting times that, even as great change roils in our collective future, a deadly calm still pervades Scotland's political class. Upheaval is our ordinary, change our constant. But never, in the past decade, the change we need. I've always found that the feeling of change and contradictory stillness is perfectly captured in the opening lines of Irish poet W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Yeats may have been writing about post-war Europe in 1919 and the beginning of the Irish War of Independence, but it is a feeling that has crept back into contemporary Britain too. The centre cannot hold. Our self-appointed masters have lost control, and all efforts to maintain the status quo only serve to further destabilise it. You need only look, with open eyes, at the state of politics today to see the truth in this. Labour, having been elected in a surge of anti-Tory sentiment, have since plummeted in the polls as their paltry offering to the electorate becomes clearer. The SNP, at the tail end of a frankly unheard of near 2 decades in power, appear to have run out of ideas. And the Conservatives, most revealingly, are acting as if great side to the right will be enough to bring their dwindling numbers back to prominence. This weakness, the desperate holding of the centre and the slide towards the populist right, all belies a fundamental misunderstanding of the state of the Union, a misunderstanding that may shape our Parliament in ways unforeseen by 2026, when the Scottish electorate return to the polls once again. None are prepared to counter the rise of anti-establishment parties such as Reform because none are capable of doing so without appealing to the very establishment that has left pensioners to freeze in winter and presided over a multitude of economic turmoils. It is not by letting politicians like Nigel Farage pick the battlefield of future elections that we will defeat the far right, but by challenging the establishment that insists on its own self-importance while endlessly ceding ground to the right. We need real change. That's what Reform offer, even if that change is inherently bad for all of us. The problem for the SNP, Labour and Conservative parties is that, fundamentally, none are willing to stray too far from one another. Yes, tax offerings and budgets vary in their inefficiencies between the parties, but they are meaningless when compared to the offerings of post-war Britain, when the top rate of tax for high earners was more than 90%, or even when it was 60% under Margaret Thatcher. The current top rate of tax under the so-called Labour Party is just 45%, and Labour's Rachel Reeves is considering extending the previous Conservative Party's income tax freeze until the end of the current Parliament. If we want a revolutionary return to the days of building the welfare state, that takes political will, and it costs money. But Scotland has the opportunity right now to show there is a different path, much as it did in 2014 when the Scottish electorate were last genuinely enthused about the political movement. The Scottish budget is to be published tomorrow, and if the SNP are serious about seeing off the threat of reform sweeping up seats come 2026, now is the time to act, to set a new path. And most interestingly, it could be the grassroots of the Scottish Green Party that forced our hand. The Scottish Greens have been rightly criticised in the past for supporting SNP budgets that included staggering cuts to local government and local services that, in my opinion, are at the heart of community-led change. Baby boxes and the promise of a nationalised energy sector that never materialised are well and good, but this is the less flashy, grinding work of councillors and local service providers that often makes the most direct impact on the well-being of our citizens. And it is those services which have been hollowed out under successive Holyrood budgets that have only cut. This time, however, Scottish Green MSPs will be unable to support any budget that further hollows out local services, following the passing of a conference motion earlier this year. With near unanimous support, Green members backed an amendment from an activist and columnist Ellie Gummersall and Councillor Anthony Carroll that binds the party into voting against any budget that includes cuts to local services. This is an issue that has been coming to a head within the Greens for a time now, and with this motion and the approaching budget, the grassroots membership have staked a claim in the future of Scotland's services. Without support from the Greens, where does that leave the SNP? They could seek the votes to pass their next budget from the Lib Dems, but in doing so, they would further cement themselves as a party that cannot successfully tackle the messaging of far-right demagogues like Farage. Or they could reflect on what must change, lest we end up with a slew of Reform MSPs and councillors in power over the next few years. That starts with a budget that commits to local spending once again, and a tax system that more equitably distributes wealth. We have time to build a case for a real left-wing alternative to Holyrood's cosy consensus, but that work must start now, and it must start with the next budget. Lest we are left, in the words of Yeats, wondering on what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. And that was a comment piece written by Steph Payton.
From The National, Wednesday the 4th of December 2024, from the Politics section. Former SNP MP Angus MacNeil joins Alba. Article written by Adam Robertson. Former SNP MP Angus MacNeil has joined Alba and could potentially stand as a candidate in the 2026 Holyrood election. The former MP for Nahelin Ananiar was previously suspended and then expelled from the SNP last year. Speaking to the Herald, he said he had joined Alba because he believed it was the best way of advancing Scottish independence. MacNeil had voiced his criticisms of the SNP's independence strategy and advocated for a Plan B approach, which did not rely on seeking agreement from the UK government for a referendum to be held. He stood as an independent candidate in July's general election, but lost to Labour's Torsil Crichton. He said, "There are a lot of good people in the SNP, but they can't achieve anything on independence when the clueless and disinterested hierarchy has thwarted debate for years, and I certainly know about that." Even now, independence is not in the motions at their upcoming National Council meeting. It is 6 years since the SNP hierarchy proclaimed it didn't need a Plan B, and then when the Plan A ran out, they hadn't a clue what to do. When asked if he would stand as a candidate at the next Holyrood election, McNeill said that would be a decision for the membership, but that I might put myself forward if there was indications that people wanted me to do that. "If it helps to kickstart independence, I would do," he said. Acting ALBA leader Kenny McCaskill also welcomed the news, saying he was delighted that McNeill had joined the party. He said, "We are very pleased that Angus is joining us. He was a long-serving comrade in the SNP, and him coming across after Alex's funeral will strengthen the movement." And that article was written by Adam Robertson. From the National, Wednesday the 4th of December 2024, from the news section. Fife. Historic St Andrews building home to former bookshop for sale. Article written by Adam Robertson. A historic building in St Andrews, owned by the same family since 1879, has been put up for sale. The property, famed for its ornate oak frontage, was formerly home to the historic bookshop J and J Innes, a business which closed at the end of last year. The shop, located on the corner of Church Street and South Street, is one of the most distinctive in the university town, with its ornate branding for the St Andrews Citizen newspaper, founded by the family and now part of the Fife Free Press group of titles. Partner at Shepherd, which is handling the sale, Jonathan Reid, said, "Formerly occupied by bookshop J and J Innes, the property would be suitable for a variety of retail, commercial and restaurant/cafe uses. While there is potential for subdivision for a variety of uses subject to planning, the remainder of the building is earmarked for conversion to residential flats. Known locally as the Citizen Shop, the premises provide around 2,444 square feet of accommodation over the ground and first floors of a substantial 4-storey Category C listed building. Rental offers from £60,000 are invited, and any interested parties should contact the sole letting agent on 01382 878 005. And that article was written by Adam Robertson.
From the National, Tuesday the 3rd of December. From the Culture section, Gaelic expert Peter Mackay named as Scotland's new Makar. By Laura Pollock. An expert in Scottish Gaelic literature says he can't wait to take on his newly appointed role as Scotland's national Makar. Dr. Peter Mackay, a lecturer at St Andrews University, takes over from Kathleen Jamie after her 3-year tenure came to an end in August. Dr. Mackay, who is originally from the Isle of Lewis, becomes Scotland's 5th Makar, a role first held in the modern era by Edwin Morgan. The Makar is tasked with promoting poetry nationally and producing works related to significant events. First Minister John Swinney said, "I am very pleased that Scotland's new Makar is Gaelic-speaking poet Peter Mackay." Peter published his first collection, Galore, in 2015. Since then, he has attracted a wide audience and many accolades through his originality, playfulness and willingness to take risks with language. With his keen understanding of how different languages interact with one another, Peter is well equipped to help forge strong connections between different linguistic communities across both Scotland and the rest of the world. Dr. Mackay said, "It is an honour and a pleasure to be appointed as Scotland's new Makar. I am very grateful to the panel for their faith in me and to the First Minister for his support, and especially his enthusiasm about a Gaelic poet taking on the role. I have grown up reading the work of and learning from the previous holders of this post, and it is a privilege to follow in their footsteps." He continued, "I love that Scotland has a Makar, not a poet laureate. The act of making is central to the role, and that the title is in Scots had a particular distinctive grounding. Part of my task, as I see it, is to encourage people to make things with all the different languages of Scotland, the dozens of languages spoken in this country, to see what kinds of conversations, games, debates can be sparked between them. I can't wait. And the article was written by Laura Pollock. From the National, Tuesday the 3rd of December, in the Culture section, rock band forced to cancel Glasgow Hydro show due to singer's criminal history, by senior reporter Kirsty Feerick. A rock band has been forced to cancel their Glasgow Hydro show. Falling in Reverse have confirmed they will not be performing in the city next week as planned. The announcement revealed lead singer Ronnie Radke's visa was denied because of his criminal history. The 40-year-old was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for violating a probation given to him after taking brass knuckles to a fight. In a TikTok video, he explained how, in 2006, he showed up to the altercation with the weapon when someone fired a gun at him, before being shot and killed by Radke's friend in response. This was ruled self-defence, but meanwhile Radke was charged with possession of brass knuckles. He got 5 years probation, which he violated, then spent 2 years in jail in 2008. Since then, he formed Falling in Reverse, and was due to embark on their first UK tour, making a stop in Glasgow next Tuesday. Now the UK tour, which is supposed to start tomorrow, has been shut down after the Home Office refused to allow Radke to enter the country. They hope to reschedule the shows as they continue the legal battle to greenlight Radke's visa. It comes after the group recently cancelled multiple dates in Europe as part of the tour. A statement from the band said, "We regret to announce that the Home Office has denied Ronnie's visa application for the remaining 2024 UK shows. The UK is currently refusing entry to visa applicants who serve more than 12 months prison time, as Ronnie did in 2008. Therefore, we will not be able to come to the UK this month to perform the shows we were greatly looking forward to. We will be postponing the shows to next year while we continue to work this issue legally to obtain the necessary visa. We will keep you posted as we know more. For anyone who cannot attend the new dates, refunds are available at the point of purchase. Thanks everyone for your support, and we hope to see you next year." Excited fans were left disappointed by the news and took to social media pages to share their frustration. One fan said, "This tour became the biggest joke I've ever witnessed. One-man band ego performance and cancelling shows due to megalomania." A second fan says, "That's so dumb, surely they figured out visas prior to announcing a tour in the UK." A third fan said, "I was your biggest fan, now I hate you because you cancelled the show." A fourth fan said, "You have disappointed many fans." The band had hoped to carry out the popular Mons Tour 2 World Domination Tour in Britain this month. The cover of the album was Radke's mugshot from his stint in jail in the early 2000s. During his time in prison, Falling in Reverse was created under the original name From Behind These Walls, which was soon changed to their current name. While still behind bars in 2009, Radke used his music contacts to create an early demo of the band's music, reports the Metalverse official. Radke was released from prison in December 2010, and, just 8 days later, he travelled with Falling in Reverse's band members to Orlando to record their first studio album over the next 2 months. Their first album, The Drug in Me Is You, was released in 2011, focusing on mixing emo and pop sounds before moving on to heavier songs in recent years. The band's 2024 album, Popular Monster, reached number 1 on the US mainstream rock chart, with nearly hundreds of millions of streams on Spotify alone. And that article was written by Kirsty Feerick and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the National, Tuesday the 3rd of December, news section. Scottish whisky worth £40,000 stolen in House of Brewer break-in, by Laura Pollock. A luxury bottle of whisky worth £40,000 is among stolen goods in a break-in at the high-end Highland department store House of Brewer. Police are investigating the break-in, which took place between 4 AM and 5:10 AM on Saturday, November 23rd. A number of goods were stolen, including the 54-year-old bottle of Highland Park. The store, located near Blair Atholl in Perthshire, sells luxury clothing, Scottish food and drink, as well as locally sourced goods from the surrounding area. Officers are asking members of the public who may have been asked to purchase any whisky to contact them with the details. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "Officers are appealing to anyone who has any information or anyone who has been asked to purchase bottles of whisky to contact them. If you have any information, please call 101, quoting incident number 0610 of November the 23rd, 2024. Alternatively, you can call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111, where you can give information anonymously." And the article was written by Laura Pollock.
The National, Thursday the 5th of December, from the news section. Scottish Budget, £34 million announced for culture sector, by Adam Robertson. The Finance Secretary has said she will increase Scotland's culture budget by £34 million next year. Robertson made the announcement as she delivered the Scottish budget in Holyrood on Wednesday afternoon. The Cabinet Secretary said she had listened to the concerns of the sector, with Scottish Labour having previously called for £25 million to be spent in this area. Speaking in Holyrood, Robertson said that music venues would receive support for paying non-domestic rates. She added, "I will not increase the culture budget by £25 million. No, presiding officer. Instead, I will increase the culture budget by £34 million next year, another record increase. We are committed to increase arts and culture funding by £100 million. After just 2 years, we're halfway there. Next year, subject to the normal budget processes, I aim to deliver a further £20 million increase. Taken with this year's rise, multi-year funding can be provided to cultural organisations across Scotland, something Angus Robertson has told me will be transformational for the sector." Robertson said this would include our world-class Scottish festivals, whose budget we are doubling, and that thousands of grassroots artists would benefit from the support. The Finance Secretary made a number of key announcements in the budget, including pledging to mitigate the impact of the two-child benefit cap. Ministers have hit out at Tory-implemented policy for years, which has not been scrapped by the new Labour administration, despite repeated calls to do so. She urged the UK government to provide the necessary data to allow for the changes to be made. Robertson told MSPs, "Be in no doubt that the cap will be scrapped. My challenge to Labour is to work with us, join us in ending the cap in Scotland, give us the information that we need. But either way, let me be crystal clear. This government is to end the two-child cap, and in doing so will lift over 15,000 Scottish children out of poverty." The National, Thursday the 5th of December, from the news section. Physical searches called off for missing teenager from Stornoway, by Adam Robertson. Police have said that physical searches for a teenager missing from Stornoway, last seen more than 2 weeks ago, have been called off. Alexander Benga was last seen around 8:45 a.m. on Monday, November the 18th, 2024, near to the water wheel within the Lewis Castle grounds. The 16-year-old is described as 6'2" and of slim build, with short brown hair, and was last seen wearing a beige jumper and black jeans, and police say he also had a yellow beanie hat with him. Specialist search officers from Aberdeen and Inverness had travelled to the island to assist with the searches, and partner agencies provided support. Police have said physical searches have now concluded, but urged anyone with information or dashcam footage to come forward. Inspector Ewan Cowan said Alexander Benga, 16, was last seen around 8:45 a.m. on Monday, November the 18th, 2024, in the Lewis Castle area of Stornoway. Despite extensive inquiries and rigorous searches involving a number of local and national specialist police resources, Alexander remains a missing person. Our thoughts are with his family at this difficult time, and we remain in regular contact with them. Physical searches have now concluded. However, we will continue to review all available information and act on any new details which are passed to the police. Please bring any information to our attention by calling 101 and quoting incident 0803, that's 0803, of November the 18th, 2024. The National, Thursday the 5th of December, from the news section. SNP push to cut grants to arms firms after genocide in Gaza report. An exclusive article by Xander Elliards. The SNP government has no option but to review grants to arms firms supplying to Israel after a major report concluded there is a genocide happening in Gaza, the National has been told. On Thursday, Amnesty International published a 296-page investigation into the Israeli assault on Gaza since the Hamas attacks of October the 7th, 2023. It found that Israel committed and is committing genocide as defined by the UN Genocide Convention, to which the UK is a signatory. The report's conclusions have put pressure on the UK government to halt arms exports to Israel, with Amnesty warning that to continue to allow weapons sales would be violating their obligation to prevent genocide. Writing in the National, Neil Cowan, Amnesty International Scotland Programme Director, said that SNP government had its own moral obligations to deal with, not least its grants to arms firms through Scottish Enterprise. The Scottish Government body has given £3 million to weapons firms, including BAE Systems, Leonardo and Raytheon Systems, since 2023. As the BBC reported last month, these grants are not subjected to human rights checks if they are below £100,000, and no grant above this threshold has ever been blocked on human rights grounds. Calling for an urgent review of the grants process, Cowan wrote, "The Scottish Government must now finally acknowledge that, if Scottish Enterprise's human rights checks routinely wave through funding for arms companies providing arms to a state carrying out genocide, then those checks are simply not credible. At best they are insufficient, at worst they risk complicity with the most serious of international humanitarian law violations." The Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise both insisted that the weapons firm grants do not provide funding for the manufacture of munitions and that the human rights safeguards in place are effective. However, campaigners and opposition politicians have heaped pressure on SNP ministers in the wake of Amnesty International's report. Patrick Harvey, the Scottish Green MSP and co-leader, told the National Israeli forces are inflicting war crimes and genocide on the people of Gaza and have killed well over 40,000 people. It is deeply hypocritical and utterly immoral for the Scottish Government to bankroll the arms companies who are profiting from the killing. Public money should always be used for the public good, not to give subsidies to some of the world's biggest war profiteers. No human rights assessment worthy of the name could say otherwise. There are no excuses that can justify this complicity. How many more bombs will have to be dropped before the Scottish Government finally does the right thing and stops funding arms dealers? A spokesperson for the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign said the SNP government had to go beyond its call for the UK government to ban arms sales to Israel and clean up its act. Firstly, accept the Amnesty report acknowledging that what Israel is doing is genocide, and then end all financial support for arms companies that facilitate the genocide, they went on. Nothing less will allow the Scottish Government to escape the conclusion that it is guilty of shameless hypocrisy. And Isabel Lindsay, the co-vice chair of the Scottish Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, said they welcomed the important work that Amnesty International is doing to ensure that the horrors being inflicted on the Palestinians in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, are carefully documented. She added, History will judge the US, UK and some European states as complicit in the destruction of Gaza and the attempt to humiliate and eliminate the Palestinians and their culture. The only support and resistance we can offer in Scotland is to ensure a complete boycott of Israel. The Scottish Government must ensure that all its agencies, like Scottish Enterprise, abide by this and publicise why they are doing so. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "The Scottish Government and its enterprise and skills agencies do not provide funding for the manufacture of munitions. Support for defence sector companies is focused on helping firms to diversify their activities and technologies, ensuring Scotland continues to benefit from their significant economic returns and thousands of jobs in the sector. Scotland's enterprise agencies have appropriate safeguards in place to ensure that any funding provided is used only for the specific purpose intended. Human rights due diligence checks are central to that process. Export licensing is reserved to the UK Government. The Scottish Government believes all arms sales to Israeli must stop." A spokesperson for Scottish Enterprise said, "Our support for companies is consistent with Scottish and UK Government policies, and our human rights due diligence tests are fully compliant with Scottish Government guidance. These checks were used to assess companies we support currently and will be applied to future funding decisions. We take our human rights due diligence checks seriously, review the procedure regularly, and update it as guidance evolves. For example, an updated Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights database of companies active in the occupied Palestinian territory was recently added to the list of independent resources used to perform our checks. We also continue to make it clear to companies, through legally binding contracts, that our funding and support can only be used to deliver agreed projects in Scotland. None of the projects we support involve the manufacture of munitions or weaponry."
This is from The National on Thursday, 5th December 2024. From the comment section. Wicked movie has eerie echoes of our own world. By Kelly Given. Rarely one to be found far from a pop culture phenomenon, the release of Wicked the movie recently has unsurprisingly not passed me by. My Apple Music 2024 replay tells me that the Wicked soundtrack is my second most listened to album of 2024, and it was released less than 2 weeks ago. That should provide some insight into the unhinged level of Wicked discourse I have been engaged in, and it's time to analyse it, although beware of some spoilers. While it's fun to keep it light-hearted and to bask in the joy of a long-awaited movie adaptation of one of the greatest musicals of all time, I feel it's time to really delve into the politics of Wicked, its eerie cultural relevance in 2024, and the deep-seated political roots of the story. It feels like divine timing that this film was released when it was, almost as though a thinly veiled warning. For those unfamiliar with the origins of Wicked, they go back as far as the original The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum in 1900. Though the main protagonist in Wicked, Elphaba Throp, is based on the green-skinned Wicked Witch of the West from the infamous 1939 movie adaptation, The Wizard of Oz. Some 40-plus years later, Gregory Maguire was so irked by the story of the Wicked Witch that he wrote Wicked and derived Elphaba from Baum's initials. It debuted on Broadway in 2003 with Idina Menzel as Elphaba and Kirsten Chenoweth as Glinda, and is one of the best performing Broadway musicals of all time. If you have ever met a musical theatre kid, you will know all about it. Even if you have merely been in close proximity to a musical theatre kid, you will probably know, at the very least, that it exists. In The Wizard of Oz, the wizard is a kooky character whose badness is really left to interpretation, whereas in Wicked, he is ultimately a fascist leader who scapegoats minorities to conceal the fact that he is weak and has no real powers, which feels quite familiar in the context of 2024. In The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West is portrayed one-dimensionally as exactly that. But in Wicked, she is a product instead of how being born with green skin led to her being ostracised and ultimately contributed to the wider perception of her as being evil. The story of Wicked follows in particular the friendship of Elphaba and Glinda, the Good Witch, and their unlikely friendship. Maguire later said that he initially had no intentions of redeeming the character of the Wicked Witch of the West, but had hoped that his interpretation might encourage critical thought around what makes people bad, and how our circumstances, particularly in childhood, can shape who we become. But his initial narrative took a turn based on the political atmosphere at the time. Saddam Hussein's rise to power and the influence of President George H.W. Bush were both pivotal in the development of Wicked. Interestingly, the 1993 murder of James Bulger at the hands of two school children also contributed to Maguire's train of thought. Justice Michael Moreland, presiding over the trial, described the conduct of Bulger's killers as very wicked, and Maguire wanted to delve into where the evil in that behaviour came from, a question many were looking for an answer to at that time. Wicked was born from a need to understand and dissect badness, as well as an exploration of the political workings of the world. So Wicked is intentionally political, even if people don't want it to be. The original Broadway musical was littered with both direct and indirect political references, some of which have made it into the film. Former US President Ronald Reagan himself is referenced in one of the musical's most recognisable songs, Popular, where Glinda references the Great Communicator, Reagan's nickname. Wicked illustrates, among other themes, how fascism can sneak up on an unsuspecting society and what it takes for it to thrive. How it often starts slowly and in drips, and how whipping up hatred against a minority often serves as a smokescreen for incompetent governance. The wizard touches on that theme himself when he says to Elphaba and Glinda, the best way to bring folks together is to give them a really good enemy. It is a well-known tact of the political right to scapegoat minority groups, particularly in times of wider instability. See also trans people, refugees and asylum seekers in 2024. To not connect those dots and the backhanded warnings in this film is to ignore a reality that has played out before us generation after generation. It is a tale as old as time. Wicked also prompts us to consider the multidimensionality of human beings and the generalisations of good and bad, as well as the origins of badness. We see this in particular with Glinda's character arc. Glinda, who is portrayed by Ariana Grande in what she describes as a dream role, is the Good Witch. She is popular and is put on a pedestal by her peers who worship her every move. She is perceived as good, while Elphaba is perceived as bad, but the story explores the realities and complexities behind the two characters. It is no accident that she's also a white, blonde, middle-class character while Elphaba is green and different. The appearance of both characters is vital to the story. How they are perceived is ultimately the decider in whether they are accepted, and cleverly touches on how appearance contributes to political scapegoating. But Glinda's goodness is subjective. She actually makes a lot of questionable decisions, and my first instinct was to say that actually she was the opposite of good. But if Wicked has a single purpose, it is to encourage its audience to grapple with the idea of good and bad and to read further into those narratives. Neither of the main characters are objectively good or objectively bad, but how they are perceived and how their character narratives are steered by both the decisions that they make and the mass hysteria around them ultimately have consequences for both of them in different ways. It purposefully encourages us to understand that being good or being bad are both generalisations, and we should investigate rather than accept as true, and that the abandonment of critical thought is where ugliness often thrives. Wicked is more than just your average, well-loved musical. It has a real-life meaning and purpose that is masterfully woven into its production. It serves as a warning, and it comes at a pivotal time for the entire world. Food for thought for us all. That article was by Kelly Given. This is from The National on Thursday, 5th December 2024, from the Culture section. Glasgow's Hydro statement as fans left fuming after gig, by Ben Waddell. Glasgow's OVO Hydro has issued a statement after fans were left fuming over chaotic and long queues at a gig at the venue. Concert-goers expressed their anger following Fontaines DC show at the venue on Wednesday, December 4th. Now, the SEC has said they always do their best to ensure a quick entry to events for guests. However, at Fontaines DC gig on Wednesday evening, they had some challenges with queues. The venue claimed part of it was due to a large portion of the crowd arriving later than anticipated. We reported how one furious fan claimed they were stuck in the queue for the show outside the venue at 9:10 p.m. and due to this missed the band's first few songs. At 8:45 p.m, another disgruntled concert-goer revealed they were left stood in the peeing rain for well over half an hour as they tried to enter the venue. Ahead of the show in the city, the OVO Hydro revealed doors for the concert were set to open at 6:30 p.m, and the event was planned to start at 7:50 p.m. and finish at 10:30 p.m. A spokesperson for the SEC said, "We always do our best to ensure a quick entry process for guests. At last night's Fontaines DC event, we had some challenges with queues. This was in part due to a large portion of the crowd arriving later than anticipated, which we suspect was partly down to the bad weather. We redeployed staff to speed up entry, and the Fontaines delayed performance to ensure as many fans were in as possible." That article was by Ben Waddell. This is from The National on Thursday, 5th December 2024. From the Culture section. Low alcohol beer launches on cross-border services, by Laura Pollock. A new low-alcohol beer has been launched by a train operator to reduce the number of drunken passengers having accidents during the festive period. Avanti West Coast said the pale ale will create a more enjoyable travel experience and help passengers drink responsibly. The Safety Thirst beer, which has 0.5% alcohol by volume, will be stocked on board the operator's services, which run on the West Coast Main Line between London Euston and Glasgow. Figures from the Rail Safety and Standards Board show the rate of recorded accidents on Britain's rail network, where intoxication was a possible factor, soared during the festive party season last year. The number of daily incidents between November 24th and New Year's Eve in 2023 was 45% higher than the rest of the period in the year to the end of March 2024. A total of 115 incidents were reported during the festive period, but that actual figure is likely to be higher because of some accidents not being reported or staff failing to identify that intoxication was a possible cause of a mishap. Avanti West Coast Director of Safety and Security and Environment, Dave Whitehouse, said, "We want the railway to be the transport of choice when people are heading out to enjoy themselves during the festive season. And while our customers are out on the network, we want them to be safe too. This time of year, our network is busier throughout the day and our staff are on hand to help everyone get to their destination. The Safety Thirst campaign is a great reminder to drink responsibly to create a more enjoyable travel experience for everyone taking a journey with us, as well as our colleagues." RSSB Chief Executive Mark Phillips said, "This is a fantastic initiative. Every year in the run-up to Christmas, our data shows an increase in passengers being injured after enjoying a little too much seasonal hospitality. Everyone should enjoy themselves, but by drinking responsibly, they will stay safe and help reduce pressure on the railway at one of its busiest times." The beer, created in partnership with Birmingham Brewing Company, is served in a can with a design inspired by heritage railway wayfinding signs and features the slogan, "Rail safety just got tasty." The charity Drink Aware described the launch as a great move, adding that around a third of people in the UK consume low and zero alcohol products to moderate their drinking. The government's road safety campaign, Think, launched an initiative last month urging young drivers to stick to zero alcohol drinks before getting behind the wheel this Christmas. It involves pubs and bars displaying 0% branding on drip mats and staff t-shirts and features an animation showing a driver and their licence disappearing into the bottom of a beer glass with the message, "Drink a little, risk a lot." That article was by Laura Pollock. This is from The National on Thursday, 5th December 2024, from the Culture section. Surge in German visitors to Scotland following after Euro 2024, by Adam Robertson. Tourism experts have reported a surge in German visitors to Scotland following the Tartan Army's trip to Euro 2024. Around 200,000 fans travelled to Germany to see Steve Clarke's team compete in the tournament. While results didn't quite go Scotland's way on the pitch, the Tartan Army was well received in Germany, with the fans voted the best supporters at the competition. Speaking to the BBC, Mohit Joshi from travel company Skyscanner said, "The number of Germans visiting Edinburgh has increased by 156% year on year. What's fascinating is that the Scottish fans brought warmth, kindness and humour to Germany, qualities the locals truly admired. This curiosity has sparked a growing interest in Scotland, reflected in the rising search queries. Visit Scotland anticipates there will be a better picture of the Tartan Army's impact next year, although said searches in Germany for Scotland as a holiday destination surged by 57% during the tournament itself. Also speaking to the BBC, owner of the Hairy Coo bus tour company, Andy Barton, said he had noticed a rise in the number of German visitors. Last year we welcomed around 3,000 Germans on our tours. This year alone, that number has jumped to about 5,000, he told the broadcaster. If we can build on the momentum from Germany this summer, it would be fantastic for Scotland. One German woman, Martina Spiech from Cologne, fell in love with the Tartan Army so much that she said she got a tattoo of the lion and thistle on her calf. She has joined the new Cologne Tartan Army fan group and said, "I truly fell in love with Scotland and wanted to show my affection in any way I can, even though I've never been there." That article was by Adam Robertson.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Hume Review and to tell your friends about our service.